Hi, everybody. Let's pick up where we left off last time. And we were talking about this thing called anarchy. Anarchy means no government. So, at the global level, there is no government. We have a bunch of states. Okay, here's all our states out here, and they're doing their thing. Um, Now, what global governance is this whole idea that even though there's no government, there are still rules that are come up with, that are enforced, that we sort of agree on together. So what I want you to think about here's the analogy I want you to think about. I want you to think about roommates. I want you to think about a situation with roommates. So we're all living in the same house here. We don't have a government. We're roommates. But things still have to get done. We have to keep the place clean. We have to pay the rent. We have to do this. We have to do that. So how does that actually work? And that's going to be the better analogy for global governance. So as you saw in that video about climate change, there's a number of problems with this. Like everybody in the house, in our sort of proverbial house here, wants climate change to not happen. Um, that being said, I don't want to be the sucker and end up reducing my economy or whatever that is takes, spending a whole lot of money on reducing climate change, while you over here get to benefit from what I'm doing, and you don't have to change at all. And so I'll make a change if you make a change. But how do I know you're going to make the change? And that becomes part of the problem. I'll give you another sort of analogy here with roommates. Like, let's say they all decide, man, our house is a mess. But we don't really have time to clean up the house. We're doing a whole bunch of other things. Can't really clean up the house. So why don't we all agree to hire a housekeeper? Okay? And the housekeeper will then take care of cleaning things up. That being said, we still have to come up with the rules about how do we put money, how do we contribute for this housekeeper to make sure the housekeeper gets paid every month, things to that degree. To be honest with you, the UN sort of acts like a housekeeper for these states. The states say, man, there's a lot of things we want to do. We just don't have the time or the energy to do it. Plus, I don't want to be the only one doing it. So I'll do a little bit if you do a little bit. I'll contribute a little bit if you contribute a little bit. So take, for example, refugees. No state wants to be responsible for all the refugees, but states believe something needs to be done for refugees. So they've essentially hired the UN to do this. Now they have to still solve problems about contributing to the UN, but there's at least sort of this thing in motion. That's global governance, is how do we solve these problems without a government? That's what we're going to talk about today. I teach a whole class on this that I'm doing in the fall, so I can get really long-winded. I'm going to do my best not to. I'm going to try and keep this short. But if you have things that you're concerned about, like human trafficking, counterterrorism, if you want clean water, if you want to stop climate change, if you want economic growth, if you want to stop pandemics, these are all global governance questions. And without global governance, they really can't be fixed or solved or reduced in any way. So let's start by talking about what governance actually is. Governance is about rules. Now, I've mentioned this the other day. It doesn't necessarily mean laws. It just means rules. How do we set the rules? It's about interpreting the rules. It's about applying and enforcing those rules, just like a government has the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the executive branch. We don't really have branches of government when we're talking about governance. We have to figure out ways to do this. The roommates have to come up with rules. They have to apply and enforce those rules without any other government, and they have to interpret those rules. Well, this is kind of what we mean by that. So governance is about rules. Governance is also about managing the rules in order to enhance legitimacy of the public realm. I know this seems really weird for me to say it this way, but essentially, the public realm is essentially how we come up with this stuff up here. So the public realm is the rules, but it's also the rule makers, the meta rules. How do we come up with the rules? Do we all meet? Do all the roommates get together, or just a couple of roommates get together? How do we come up with the rules? That's governance is about managing these rules, about making rules, and all that kind of stuff. All right, I'm skipping that one right there. So one more thing that I want to talk about before we move on to talking about collective action problems is that rules are institutions. We talked about institutions the other day. These things can be formal, meaning they're written down, they're documented. Like, for example, in the roommate situation, a chore chart that's hanging up on the fridge. A chore chart is a written, formal set of rules. Now, again, that doesn't mean that it's a law in that sense. It just means it's written down. We all kind of know what's going on. It's documented. There's also informal rules, institutions. Like, for example, you know, when you meet somebody, you shake their hand. So it's not written down anywhere. It's just something you do. This includes behavioral codes, includes norms, includes all sorts of things. And again, we're talking about states here. So states' behavior codes and state behavior norms. We define institutions as humanly devised constraints that shape human interaction or human behavior. What they do then is they limit the set of possible choices. When I bump into you on the street, there are some things that I can do. Like, there's a whole range of things I can do, but there's also a whole bunch of things that it's not appropriate for me to do. That are these humanly devised constraints. So, for example, if I bump you in the street, how come I don't hit you in the stomach? Because we say that is not one of the possible choices. That is an institution. It's not something we've necessarily written down anywhere, that you don't basically hit each other when you meet each other. We shake hands, or we say hi, or we nod hello, or something like that. Those are sort of things that are possible and things that are impossible. Impossible? Impossible. Impossible is not the right word. Not even thinkable. That's what I want to think about here. What they do is they reduce certainty and they make interaction with each other easier. And that's going to be important for states. How do we make interactions with each other easier? Okay, so we're going to talk about collective action problems, and that's going to start with a conversation about public goods. You're going to watch a quick video. You've already seen this video, so if you get all this stuff, just keep on moving on to the next thing.